Hi, it's Polly with Get Busy Thriving, and I wanted to make this video on the idea that I see a lot with people who find themselves battling some sort of either addiction or bad habit. And what I see, and I've seen it in myself, in the past, is let's call it an unstructured day. So oftentimes people may be right on track, things are going well when their day is structured, they go to work, they come home, everything's okay. And then maybe their trouble time is the weekend when they don't have that planned activity, they don't, they're not running themselves ragged or whatever, they're not just going from one thing to the next. And what they find is, when they have to sit with their emotions or they have to sit with something uncomfortable, or they're not going, and actually they, if you will, pay attention to themselves, pay attention to their emotional guidance system, and they get uncomfortable. And when they get uncomfortable, they don't know how to handle it, and so that they get off track. They detour into emotional states, and then they go further downhill. So I wanted to share some ideas with you about that unstructured time, and just ways to re-empower yourself and not be afraid of unstructured time. So what I want to remind you of is that oftentimes people find emotions to be scary, like they're this thing to be run from, or I don't want to feel that. And what if you just looked at emotions as a signal from the universe, whether your thoughts and what you're focusing on and what you're making, the story you're telling yourself. If you're telling a disempowering story, it's putting you into a suffering state, then how can you tell a better story about it? So your emotions aren't something you have to be afraid of. It's just a guidance system, an indication, like a warning light, or you're getting hotter, you're getting closer to what the source within you thinks about that thing, or you're getting colder. The negative emotions are telling you, that thing that you're thinking about and what you're making it mean, you've got to, transition that, think something differently. So look at them as just a signal from the universe, signal from your inner self, your God self, whatever you want to call it, that what you're focused on and what you're making it mean is out of alignment from how your source sees it. So just use it as what if I thought about this? What if I thought about this? So use it as a way to get back into alignment, which should always be your goal. And I'll just remind you that your emotions are created from three things. And what creates the emotional state that you have is a factor of three things. First is focus. Where is your attention going? Are you focused on something in the present, like a person or a situation? Are you focused on the past, the future? Are you worrying about something? Second is, what are you making it mean? What's the story you're telling yourself about that thing? You add meaning to what is all the time. That's just how our brain works. It's a fight or flight type of animal instinct, made up millions and millions of years ago. That's how the brain works. It gives meaning to things to decide, is this something I should be scared about? Or is this something that's going to hurt me? Or is this okay? Am I okay here? So just know that your brain is adding meaning to what's going on in the world. So either you're adding an empowering meaning or a disempowering meaning. So the second thing is what's the story you're telling yourself about that thing that you're focused on? And the third thing is your physiology. So that's your body. Is your body just have you not moved today? If you're feeling in a disempowered state, in a state of suffering, are you just kind of glumped up on the couch? Are you, haven't eaten well all day? You're exhausted. You didn't get any sleep. Your nutrition's out of balance. You're kind of just, you're in a disempowered physiology. You can change that physiology. So getting movement, standing up, going for a walk, getting some oxygen, drinking some water, whatever it is. So looking at your physiology, taking some deep breaths, standing taller, if you will. So those three things together creates your emotional state. Change any one of those, you would change your emotional state. So radical change in any one of those three. Shift your focus onto something else. Give it a new meaning. Move your body can change your emotional state instantly. So don't be scared about unstructured time. I find unstructured time, when people think it's scary, is just they're sloppy in managing their emotional state. So be better at managing your emotional state, and you won't be scared of unstructured time, because when those emotions come up, you don't have to fear them like something you have to run from, or they're going to take over. Instead, just look at them as a guidance system and as an indication to tell you if you're aligned or not. And just remind you to take responsibility for the situations that you're attracting into your life, because we're all energy, and whatever we're focusing on, whatever we're putting out into the world, we're attracting into our life. And the emotional state that you're in, also take responsibility for, I'm creating this upset, I'm creating this anxiety, I'm creating this worry because I'm focused on something that's out of my control, or I'm making this mean way more than it needs to mean. I'm doing it. So take responsibility. Get get managing your emotions back under your own control instead of feeling like they're out of control. And then slow down. You know, a lot of times I see people who just they get themselves running so ragged, and maybe on the weekend it's just an opportunity to just go, 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 and they're trying to just distract themselves from their emotions. But from what I've said earlier in this video, don't be afraid of those emotions. You don't have to run from them. Feel them and work with them. Look at them as something that you're managing your emotions. You're managing your emotional state. You are changing your emotional state for the better or for the worse with your thoughts, with your physiology, and with the meaning and the story that you're telling yourself. So notice those things and not be so afraid of having emotions, okay? And then the last thing I want to share with you is this idea of momentum. And so if you put a car at the top of the hill in San Francisco and you just nudge it off the hill, aka your emotions, right? You just nudge it off the hill, gets a little bit of momentum, and you jump out in front of it and you stop it. You can stop that car pretty easily, not a lot of pain. Just like, boop, it just sort of bumps you. But you let that emotion gain momentum, go down the hill, just adding more and more velocity to it with more and more story and talking about it to other people and blogging about it, and whatever. You just let it go on and on and on instead of catching it. And you try at the bottom of the hill to get out in front of that emotion. That's when people will say, well, the urge was just so strong, for people with addictions or habits, like the urge was so strong. It's like, well, man, it started up here. Most likely it started somewhere earlier in the day or the day before. It was a lot earlier. And if you had caught it and you'd worked with it, work with your emotional state, it wouldn't have that crazy momentum off the bottom of the hill. Because if you try and stop that emotion or stop that urge at the bottom of the hill, way more painful, way more self-control and managing and willpower and discipline required than if you stop it up at the top of the hill. So how can you be a better self-manager, self-aware of your emotions earlier on, so when they get a little bit nudged off, you're aware and you can manage them, you can move them into a better state. So I hope that helps. Unstructured time does not have to be something that you have to be afraid of. It can be, a beautiful time to relax and enjoy it and guide the direction of where your unstructured time goes. If you start to see it get off track, you start to see the little nudge, you're like, oh, you say, oh, I don't have anything to do this afternoon, what am I going to do? Step out in front of it and say, I'll figure this out. I'll be all right. It's that self-talk. It's that managing the thoughts that are going through your head and being in control of them, not letting them be bigger than you. I hope that helps.